Muslim Americans are assured an open-door side-by-side rule in any Harris administration should Democrats win the 2024 election go. Tim Walz, Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, pledged Thursday night. Harris and Walz are trying to woo Muslim voters still furious over President Joe Biden's administration's support of Israel during its year-old war in Gaza against Hamas terrorists, Reuters reports. Harris has pledged continued support for the Jewish state while emphasizing her push for a ceasefire, words Walz echoed on Thursday, while promising a role for Muslims. The Minnesota governor made his promise during an online meeting organized by Emgage Action, a Muslim American activist group that recently endorsed Harris. Assalamu alaikum, Walz said on the group call, using the Arabic greeting before he offered an open door to Muslim and Arab voters. Reuters reports he said, Vice President Harris and I are committed that this White House will continue to condemn in all forms anti-Arab sentiments being led by Donald Trump, but more importantly, a commitment that Muslims will be engaged in this administration and serve side by side. Emgage Action announced its endorsement of Harris last week. Walz's participation in Thursday's online event coincided with the debut of Arab Americans for Harris, Walz, NBC News reported. So Walz spoke about the conflict in the Middle East and empathized with Muslim and Arab Americans in line with other Democrats seeking to forge an alliance with followers of the faith. Assalamu alaikum, Walz said before discussing the crisis in the Middle East. I know the pain of this community is deep. Our hearts are broken. And seen Iraqan 5 years sigh. The scale of death and destruction in Gaza is staggering and devastating, the Minnesota governor stated. Tens of thousands of innocent civilians killed, families fleeing for safety over and over again. We all know on here this war must end, and it must end now. The push by Walz follows reports Muslim American voters are looking at former President Donald Trump more favorably, a poll last month found. Trump's standing among the group has taken a positive turn compared to 4 years ago, the New York Post reported.
Anwar Sadat and gave birth to Hamas. Just a short time ago, we heard from the Harris-Walz campaign. Their statement reads, Governor Walz does not have a relationship with him, meaning Imam Zaman, and Governor Walz strongly condemns Hamas terrorism. Kaylee, back to you.
Well, Walz is facing serious questions about his relationship with that cleric that you heard Mike talk about, and about his military record. But Walz hasn't said one word on any of this, despite growing calls for him to speak out. I mean, Emily, it's stunning. You know, he has several meetings with this individual. This guy posted a link to this film, this controversial film, back in 2015, but yet he has seen him multiple times since then. I mean, Tim Walz is a radical.
Well, and I think that's what is so disturbing and what taxpayers need to hold dear is that, as Mike Tobin, the salient point there was a mere simple background check, not even a background check, actually, just a simple look into this guy would have revealed that in 2015 he posted a link to Hitler's writings. The whole point is that if you had just done a bit of due diligence, you would see that you are fostering a relationship with an absolute extremist, a radical, filled with hate and anti-Semitism. And the point is that there isn't a divorce. There's not a tepid relationship. It's actually quite robust. 5 different appearances. He gave one of the invocations in front of when Walz first got the state position. And the fact that taxpayers now, his administration donated $100,000 to that, well, that's where is that money from? The administration has no income. We all need to remember that. So any source of income for the government actually means you. So anyone watching here from Minnesota today, understand that your money went to this radical group that has ties to extreme radicals, as prosecutors have confirmed. And the fact that Walz's statement is a simple condemnation of Hamas's attacks, rightly so, of course. But you missed the point, sir. You absolutely missed the point that you are fomenting a relationship with someone who is deeply radical and deeply dangerous. And that's where the questions lay.
That's important. And Paul, I want to broaden this out as to why this matters, because you have this imam and then you have radicals in Congress like Ilhan Omar. We'll see if she keeps her seat tonight, among others. And so I had all of this in my mind as I read this from Politico this morning. Progressive national security professionals are already angling for positions in a possible Kamala Harris administration, hoping to steer the White House in a different direction on Israel, and other issues are being largely shut out under Joe Biden. Some progressive activists plan to draft lists of people Harris could hire in the National Security Council and the Department of Defense. So could we see like a Secretary of State, Ilhan Omar, a Secretary of Defense, Rashida Tlaib, the radicals take over?
I can tell you the first 51 resumes that are going to show up, right?
Yes.
So, You know, listen, these cases are tough to make. I mean, I work in this space, right? And I know the MAS. And the problem is that the charities, there's a continuum between the charities and then into groups that are more radical. And it's very tough to make those cases. Realistically, there was only one the feds ever managed to make, which was the Holy Land Foundation. And it was a bit of a debacle. And that's why this stuff continues. But to move it into the political realm, you know, I actually think that while it does matter and it should matter to the electorate at large, to the Democratic base these days, this is a Jeremiah Wright moment. They don't care.
Yeah.
And so, oh, you linked to this guy? Oh, let me see what he has to say. Oh, well, that's where I am. You could argue that he's already made the point. I'm hooked to this guy. I don't need to say anything else about it. I'm going to go quiet. Base, you know where I stand. And we all know that's where the energy and the small donations are coming from. This is the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. It does exist. We saw it in the universities. And I think that's out there. And that's why I don't think he's going to repudiate this very hard.
And you're right. People, Harris, over time, I mean, I remember being at the RNC and there were these Jeremiah Wright scandals. But you're right. Like, no one cared.
No one
it didn't
cared.
move the needle.
Yeah, but it did for a little bit. It did put some oxygen into other Democrats who were hoping to get through that primary, namely Hillary Clinton. And it was right around the time. Remember, she waited till June to get out of the race? I mean, it was late. Maybe I'm the only one who remembers that, but I thought the timing of the Reverend Obama's pastor, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, the timing of that was really interesting. The timing of this is what it is because we only have 84 days till the election. So, I mean, it's all just coming like water out of a hose right now. I do want to mention that in my former home state of Minnesota is the primary today for Ilhan Omar. And you were talking about all the future jobs. She may be available for one of them. Depending on how this goes. If they vote against her, this will be the third a far-left liberal in as many weeks to get to lose in a primary, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman as well.
I do want to quickly, Cheryl, get to this other scandal that we hit on, and this is the Tim Walz scandal, which is getting real legs about his military service, the questions that have been raised. And Jesse Watters Primetime put together all of these times where you had Walz repeating that he retired as a command sergeant major. Watch it.
I'm a retired command sergeant major.
Retired command sergeant major in the Guard.
And they said, this is Congressman Walz. He's a retired sergeant major in the Army.
Retired command sergeant major.
Retired sergeant major in the Army.
Retired sergeant major.
He should answer questions, not just Kamala scrubbing from her website. He needs to sit down and answer these questions.
Well, that would be like me saying that I'm the CFO of Fox News Media. Happy to serve everybody, but, you know, but unrealistic and not true. Yeah, I mean, this is why you have things like LinkedIn where you can look at somebody's background and their titles. And if I put down that I was the CFO of XYZ company, that would be false. I would be lying. So yes, facts matter. And I don't know why the campaign is not responding to this. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're because he obviously was a pick to try and bring in those veterans, try to bring in Middle America, Minnesota, Michigan. But that might be backfiring. Considering, real quick, though, I want to say though, I'm grateful to anybody that serves in the military.
Absolutely.
Anybody. And I part of me doesn't like to see veterans going after veterans, and that's what this Walz scandal has brought up in the media everywhere, which I think is unfortunate. So I'm to him, thank you for your service, but maybe be honest about your title.
Yeah, it's a question of deception, it's a question of character, and it's a question of judgment for Kamala Harris. So sit down, answer questions, clear it up. Hey, I know a lot of people who'd love to interview Tim Walz.